the thing I would tell people to do in the most urgent manner would be to figure out your values if you haven't already done that. And this gets to what we were talking about with self-knowledge, but we never really mentioned the term values. But your values, your personal values, will serve as the guidepost for how you should make your decisions. And so, for instance, you're pregnant, or maybe you just had your baby and you're really wanting to go part-time, but you're worried about allegiance to your patients or your clients. You're worried about what your boss is going to think. You're new, so you're only a couple years in. And I mean, I've had coaching clients just like this actually recently, and they don't want to ask. Well, think about what is most important to you.
Welcome to the Real Estate Mogul MD podcast. Thanks for tuning in and taking control of your financial future. This is a show where we not only motivate and inspire, we give you actionable, real-world experience to help you live life by design. You'll hear journeys and stories from other physicians, investors, coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs. And now, here's your host, Brett Riggins. A lot of times when I talk with colleagues, with other investors about our goals. And a lot of times that does involve real estate. But even when we set goals in real estate, whether it's one rental, 100 units, storage units, whatever it may be, it needs to require who I need to become in order to reach those goals. That's so important. Today's conversation is just about that. Who do I need to become? And the person that I want to become, that we all need to become, I feel, is that person who is happy, that person who is free, financially free, geographical free, whatever you may need in your own goals. Today's conversation is really going to dive down into the self-realization to understand what makes me happy, how should I be making these decisions? And, we're going to talk a little bit about values and using values as our guideposts to make this path possible. Today's guest is a physician, a writer, a speaker, a lifestyle design coach, that's pretty cool, behind Practice Balance. She helps physicians and other professionals step off the treadmill of achievement, rediscover their true selves, and cultivate a practice of balance. Everybody, please welcome Dawn Baker to the show. Well, hello, Dawn. Welcome to the show. How does it feel to be Dawn today?
That's an interesting question. It feels great. It feels good every day. I am living in a off-grid wilderness area now, and every day I wake up, the air is clear. There's no noise pollution. It's beautiful. We had deer in our front yard, and I just feel so healthy.
Off-grid, and this is a whole conversation of itself, but yet we are streaming live video to this platform, recording this episode. And we talked just briefly about this. Starlink has enabled us to do this. Isn't that crazy?
It's amazing. I think more people will live an alternative lifestyle like this that 100%. Do professional jobs as time goes on. I'm a physician and my husband is an attorney, and I'm not able to do all of my work remotely, but he is able to do like 99% of his work remotely. And I think that's true for a lot of professions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think for us in our journey, I know my parents live not necessarily off the grid, but outside of where internet was available, right? Like they still have power and everything, but internet was it was so limiting. And through the years, trying to find the right solution was challenging. But when they went to Uplink or to Starlink, it was just remarkable. And it's kind of like one of those things. Why didn't I do this before? The other part of that, we're going to talk a lot about this. We're going to talk about balance. Right. And especially as a physician, you working that balance back into your life. I can't wait to get into your story. But before we get there, that freedom piece is a huge, huge piece of the balance and the geographical freedom that now Starlink offers. Because when we were looking, when we moved last time was, okay, where can I get glass? Where can I get high speed internet? Right. But now it doesn't matter because I can do what I need to do anywhere. I mean, the coverage of Starlink is just remarkable. This is not a commercial for Starlink. So let's jump into this and have a conversation about Dawn. Please let everybody know a little bit about your medical background, where you started and where you're at now.
Sure. So I am an anesthesiologist, and my current work situation is one that really does involve location and time freedom, which are very important to me. I work as what they call a locum tenens or per diem physician. So that means that I travel to my work locations, which is what allows me to live in the wilderness as I am desiring to do so. But I can travel to other hospitals that are in need of having extra physicians do their anesthesiology for their surgeries. And I do this part-time. And I am in a position where we would call ourselves financially independent. So my work is optional. And I work typically about 1 week a month, sometimes 2 weeks a month clinically. And then I have a non-clinical arm of what I do, which is speaking, writing, coaching other physicians and professionals in the work-life balance area. And my background is that I actually was a chemical engineer before I went to medical school. I started out doing jobs in engineering and then decided that I wanted something more service oriented. And the feeling of that was brought on also by doing a lot of rock climbing and world traveling. And at that time, I realized that I didn't want to be pegged to living in a specific area, which is what being an engineer does. When you have a specialty like petrochemicals or biotech or something like that, you then need to go live in the areas where that industry is. And I said, man, I really want to do something that's science oriented and service oriented too, because I was traveling and seeing all sorts of different types of people living in different situations. But I wanted to do something that I could do anywhere. And that's what brought me to medicine.
And medicine on the show called The Real Estate Mogul MD. I'm excited to talk about this balance and this idea that you're financially free. So where and how does that happen? Especially, I can't imagine the amount of money that you invested in yourself in the schooling required for both those professions. So if you were to just summarize that journey of getting to that financially free piece, how does that happen, Dawn?
Well, I think that there is a component of luck and privilege, and there's a component of hard work and choices. And that's true of a lot of different things. But for me, you talked about school debt. So I made choices early on in my life where I chose to go to a state school that offered me a scholarship. So I had no undergrad school debt. I then went to a state medical school. I had very limited medical school debt from that. My husband and I did our schooling for professional schools, because he is an attorney, as I mentioned, staggered so that the other person could be working while the one person was being a money suck, if you will. Mm-hmm. So that was also a choice component. You know, from the standpoint of luck and privilege, there's a timing aspect to things. When my husband was doing his law school and was getting done, there were a lot of job opportunities in his particular specialty of law. And so that somewhat is luck. And then from the privilege aspect, I was very lucky to have a supportive family, a family with two parents who were able to help me to make good choices, to fund things for me and opportunities and, make things happen. But as far as also a little later on in life, once we got into our professions, I would say that we were very smart about spending. Like I mentioned, we were rock climbers early on. And so we understood what it was like to live with less money and live very simply. And we saw people also that weren't in high octane professions living a climbing lifestyle and working part-time so that they could fund their climbing lifestyle, but they were very happy. And they were just like doing jobs like school photographer or like lab tech or something like that. And so we knew it was possible to be happy without having a lot of material possessions. And when our incomes increased as we went along in our professional journeys, we really didn't succumb to a huge amount of lifestyle creep, I would say. So we spend very flexibly still to this day.
Yeah, I think that's a huge piece of it, the lifestyle creep, and kind of that idea of living off grid, to air quotes. I don't know how off grid it is, but that's got to simplify things too. It does increase the cost of some things, but it's not like you're keeping up with the Joneses, with the house down the block or whatever. So that's a whole different thing. And just the ability to maintain that focus on what it is that brings you value in life. Now, in this financially freedom path, I see some pictures of some kiddos there in your social media platform, and that's practice balance. Just the two words together on Instagram. You can see these. Who is this little kiddo?
So I have one daughter, and there is a long story behind that. When you sent me questions that you like to have people look at for preparing for podcasts, one of the things that you ask is, what is your greatest achievement, opportunity, and what have you learned from it? And my greatest achievement, I feel like, is having that child, having a daughter. And the reason is because we can get into this whole story, but when I was in my medical training, I had a very specific vision of having this location and time freedom. And that was what medicine was going to afford to me coming from engineering. And I lost sight a little bit on that path and ended up getting pegged into an anesthesiology subspecialty that was very niche. And it would have put me in the exact position that I was in. But what woke me up from that was my fertility workup, which I was having infertility problems. We were trying to have a child. I was in my mid-30s because I was a little later in my training. A lot of people go to medical school in their late 20s or kind of like mid-20s. And I was having problems getting pregnant. And it turned out that I had a large pituitary tumor, which is a brain tumor in the middle of your brain that causes a lot of hormonal disruption. And when I had this wake-up call, I realized that I was on the wrong path and I had to get back to my path of freedom. And from there, it took me another few years before I finally had this child. And I had to have her with the help of in vitro fertilization. Mm-hmm. So yeah, she's a huge part of our life. And I'm so grateful that we were able to do that. And that also is another, finance piece. It's extremely expensive to do fertility treatments.
Wealth is measured in so many different ways, and it's so much more than just money or anything monetary. Children, such a blessing. And even if we had nothing else in our life, that the value of being a parent is so amazing, and it means so much. So it's, again, what's wealth to you? What's wealth to me? Everybody has their own feeling, but being grateful for what we already have, we could be so wealthy already. So congratulations on that journey with the beautiful daughter. The question I was leading into there, Dawn, was, are you on your freedom path where you're at currently, living happily? Are you able to provide that same platform that you were provided to get your daughter to where she would want to go? If she wants to go the intense journey of being a chemical engineer and then an anesthesiologist, are you able to do that and live a more simple lifestyle now?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I hope that we're doing the right things. I mean, you never really know, I am doing things differently than my parents did, for sure. However, I really think that we're living a life of close connection with her. We homeschool. She has a lot of opportunities to learn things on her own pace and whatever it is that she's interested in. She's only almost 9 years old, but currently she's interested in veterinary medicine. And we have animals on our property. So that gives her an opportunity to get exposed to that and take care of animals. But one thing that we have really tried to instill in her is that the piece of balance and happiness, and that has nothing to do with the career choices per se that you follow. and that we don't expect her to go to college. We want her to do what gives her fulfillment, and we feel like we explained to her that we're living by our values, and we want her to cultivate that and to figure out what's important to her. So hopefully she's getting that message.
Yeah. Caught and not taught. It's so interesting as children grow. I have a 10-year-old daughter and an 11-year-old son. So we're right in that same pocket. My wife is amazing. She's the homeschool teacher. She taught for 16 years prior to leaving and coming into the real estate world with us. But now she gets to share that experience and her knowledge, her wisdom with the children. So again, attaching to that geographical freedom, because they're homeschooled, you literally can go anywhere, right? Very interesting. And the piece of freedom that is out there and kind of links back into the show of real estate. But I see that you've got a book. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
That's such a feat as well, too. That's amazing. It's called Lean Out, and I'm sure it has so much of your experience and your story tied into this, everything that we're talking about right now, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So the book is go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say it definitely ties my story in with actually other women professionals. I do profile other people in the book too. And then the beginning is a refutation of the book Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg. Mm-hmm. And are we happier with that lean in culture than we were? I would argue that we're not healthier and we're not happier. And I even talk about the epidemic of infertility among women professionals in the beginning of the book. And that is one of the only books that addresses that issue. It's becoming a huge problem. It's double the rate in women professionals, physicians and lawyers than it is in the general population.
Oh, wow.
And then the second half of the book empowers you to find your own lean out journey. And that's really the part that's applicable to both men and women, even though the book has a byline of a professional women's guide to finding authentic work-life balance. Those exercises and the information of how you can find your own work-life balance are applicable to men and women.
Yeah. I love it. I mean, it's a whole new perspective of me, because lean in, right? Lean in. We're all like conditioned to kind of like lean in, but the idea of, okay, lean out. And I have this conversation. It's such a blessing that I get to speak with so many amazing people, not only in this show, but be on other podcasts. And so many of the conversations are based around changing your mind, changing your life. I mean, for me, because that was the turning point. It was when I actually did lean out and stopped pushing so hard that I could really find that pace forward. But so for me, finding that path forward in the lean out world was the change in my life. And what when is enough, right? I see you talk about being on the treadmill, and I say it as a way of, we're creating, us high performers are creating these machines that eventually eat us. Not only they eat us, they take away from the things that we should be most protective of, our time with our children, our time with our family, and those things that they're catching and we're not teaching. So no matter what we're trying to teach our children, they're going to pick up on the things that we're not teaching them, and that conditioning base learning process. And then eventually the self-realization that I'm sure you talk about in Lean Out, that the children will have to then develop their own path forward. In this path, being able to lean out, and we've talked about still providing for your daughter as well, and in this place of happiness that you are now. How happy are you when you get a check from Amazon for a book being sold? Isn't that one of the coolest things in the world?
I love it. I definitely, the book was a labor of love, and it doesn't matter how many I sell. I mean, I think it's great to reach more people, and I really appreciate every purchase that I see, but also just other people spreading the word. Like, what really gets me is when someone in one of the Facebook groups I'm in, maybe, or just randomly out of the blue, will tag me and on social media and be like, look at this book. I read this book. This book is awesome. I can't believe I loved Lean In 10 years ago. Or
Yeah.
something like that. I've had those kind of situations. And yes, it is great. And like you, I had jumped into the podcast world and I was really reticent because I wasn't sure that I was going to like doing these kinds of conversations where I had to lead the conversation. I've done a lot of podcasts as the guest. And it has been so fun. I have met the most interesting people. I now have friends that, I would have never met otherwise. And so that has been, that offshoot from the book has also been very rewarding.
Yeah. It's amazing. And the biggest piece of growth in your life, I say, once there's self-realization, it's a massive, massive piece of self-development. But then expanding associations is right there alongside of it, Don, where as a podcast host and a guest, you get to meet so many cool people. And the other crazy part, like when somebody tags you about something you said, when you come, maybe it's been like 2 years or 3 years since you've seen or interacted with somebody, and they bring up that time that you said that one thing, and it made this little pivot or this little change in their life. It's like, oh my goodness, that stuff is crazy. But giving back and helping is, again, if we're measuring wealth, measure that instead of money, being able to help others. In the world of sales for Mr. Zig Ziglar, stop selling and start helping. And when you're able to get into that point in your life and no more leaning in, but leaning out, like what the book says, is so rewarding. It's just, it just feels so good. And probably a lot of people are listening to this like, yeah, Brett, whatever, I've got debts. I got to pay my bills. I've got all this stuff. Well, the thing that I would say, Don, would be just, believe that there is that path forward. Self-realization is a huge first step, and then expanding your associations, getting around the right people, reading the book, listening to podcasts to figure out what are the things I need to do to make this happen. So if you were to talk directly to the listeners right now that are, hearing me like be so happy and everything's perfect. First of all, everything's not perfect. We'll never remove all the hurdles, no matter what you see on social media or anywhere else. Life is not perfect. I'm not always happy. I choose to be happy. Sometimes it takes a lot more work than others. So let's get that straight. But the people who are maybe listening and be like, I've got too much. I don't have the time. I don't have the mindset. I don't have what it takes to get there. What are the top 3 things that the listener should do in order to take their perspective towards lean out?
Okay. Well, I think just echoing on what you said, first of all, it is something that you have in your control to do, but it takes work. There are a lot of simple practices that you can do, but simple doesn't mean easy. Simple means you still have to put in time and effort in order to do them. And so the first thing I would say is to learn more about yourself. And what I mean by that is that a lot of us, when we're in that lean in culture, we're in the hustle culture and we're go, 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 and we're so busy, we forget who we are. We forget what we like. We forget things about our personality, like how you gain energy and how energy is drained from you. And taking some time to think about those things. I have in my book referenced some personality tests, which sounds totally woo-woo, but I picked the very practical, easy, not super long, not super woo personality tests. Doing those kind of things can be really helpful to learn a little bit more about your nature or rediscover yourself. And then one of the other things is to cultivate some sort of stillness practice in your life so that you can have some time in your days where your brain is not always churning, so that you can have that pause and have some time to slow down. Because when you do slow down a little bit, that is when you're able to realize like, hey, you know what? I'm actually not happy doing this particular job, or I need to change my schedule around because this particular thing that I'm doing is completely draining me, whatever it is, taking call as a physician or, seeing a certain type of patient. I know surgeon. He is retired now, but he talks a lot in his coaching practice and in his books, Corey Fawcett, about like what brings you joy and what really just like do you hate, and how can you get that hate part out, even if it's something that seems like you can't get it out of your life, like, you know, doing a particular kind of surgery. You think that's sacrilege if I am a general surgeon and I just say like from now on I'm not going to do, you know, these vascular cases or something like that. But that's not true. You can do that. You can tailor what you're doing, you know, on a daily basis. And then the other thing is a lot of people that come to me for coaching, this is my third recommendation, they are in a state where they don't feel competent to ask for what they want. There's a problem of not knowing what you want, and the mindfulness and the self-knowledge part is what can help you with that. But having the confidence to go against what other people are doing and maybe disappoint some people, ask for something different that's not on the menu of your workplace, whatever that might be, like doing a different schedule, cutting back on your time, something like that, not seeing a certain type of client. Having that confidence is cultivated by doing everyday challenging things. And what I mean by that is trying something new, taking a new class, learning a new skill, things that you haven't done for a while because maybe you were in school and you were just pushing for so long to hone and master whatever your profession is now. But take a minute and like just go do an art class or something different. And those kind of things over time, learning a new exercise, strengthening your body in a new way, accepting challenge can really help you to cultivate some confidence to use at other times when you want to change your work-life balance.
And making that decision it's so important. But I think even prior to that, in making the decision to design the life that you want to live, but even prior to that is understanding what makes you happy. What are your triggers, right? And to get there, there is this, I think I say Jim Rohn on about every single show that I've ever recorded. But there is this, I think it's goal setting speech that he did. And the beginning of that speech is, okay, remove all of the blocks, all of the limits. Don't put yourself inside of a box. Don't think about what your employer wants for you. Don't think about what you can afford, what you are able to do. Take all of that stuff away. What makes you happy, right? And if we're able to see that and understand the triggers, you talked about these personality tests. I had read recently this book. It's called 7 Primal Questions. And I don't know if you've read that book yet, but it's very interesting. And there's so, I mean, I'm sure you can break this down into so much more, but that the simplicity of the 7 primal questions, for me, understanding where I'm at and what's triggering me, and the ability to know, because I've searched for so long, Don. I was like, what's my gift? What am I good at? And it makes me feel unsuccessful that I can't put my finger on it. But you want to know what's funny? My primal question is, am I successful? So all along I'm searching, trying to find this. And if I can't define it, then I'm that's a trigger for me. Right. But on the spin of that, Dawn, is my gift is helping others be successful. So now that I know that, it makes me so happy. And we talked about this earlier, the stop selling and start helping. I'm here to get things for you, not from you. So if I've got to develop my skill to build trust, to build that connection, that's when people open up. That's when I'm able to say, okay, I'm going to be transparent. I don't know everything. Life isn't perfect. I have struggles, but this A, B, and C has worked so good. And I've gotten so much closer with my family because of this. If I can make those connections based off of having a general idea of what my triggers are, it helps me get to that life by design. And that's where you're at. I can feel it. You're so happy in the way that you're speaking. And I'm sure, I have not read your book yet. I absolutely want to read this, The Lean Out version of it, because it's given me a new perspective on leaning in. It's okay to lean out. And I ask this so many times to so many people: what is wealth to you? When is enough enough? And it comes down to being happy in your life. If you could go back 10 years and set beside somebody who was maybe on that similar path. So 10 years ago, was that med school for anesthesiology? Is that where you were 10 years ago?
No, 10 years ago. So I'm 50. So 10 years ago, I was 40. So I was pregnant with my daughter at 40. And I was working as a young attending. And, I don't know what you're about to ask, but I will say that was a turning point for me, because I wanted to go more part-time. And I knew that as soon as I had her, but I had to time the ask and had to kind of like navigate that situation.
Perfect. So let me reframe the question. If you could go back that 10 years, and with the knowledge that you have now, the experiences that you have now, and you could set beside somebody, and we even narrow it down even further, a lady who is pregnant or looking to build a family in the world of medicine, whether they're attending at the time as well too, or maybe even prior to that, what would you tell that person?
Can you say what it is that they're looking for?
So they're on the same path, similar path as you. Maybe they're attending, but they have the goal or are actually currently pregnant. So if there are any listeners out there right now who are currently pregnant and striving for this ability to lean out, what if you could go back 10 years and tell them something based off of your experience and your knowledge from today, what would you tell them?
Yeah, I think the thing I would tell people to do in the most urgent manner would be to figure out your values, if you haven't already done that. And this gets to what we were talking about with self-knowledge, but we never really mentioned the term values. But your values, your personal values, will serve as the guidepost for how you should make your decisions. And so, for instance, you're pregnant, or maybe you just had your baby and you're really wanting to go part-time, but you're worried about allegiance to your patients or your clients. You're worried about what your boss is going to think. You're new, so you're only a couple years in. And I mean, I've had coaching clients just like this actually recently, and they don't want to ask. Well, think about what is most important to you. Is your job more important than your family? Or is your family more important than your job? What parts of your life are really pulling at your heartstrings? What kind of virtues do you want to model for your children? Those are the things that you should focus on, and that's how you should make your decisions. And in the end, those matter a lot more than what someone at work thinks of you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so crazy that whether it's in our conditioning or where do we pick this up, that it's the other way around? And why do we have to teach ourselves that? That is so crazy. Self-realization is a huge step of this, understanding where you're at to even understand, hey, this is the way I'm acting, but these are my values. So this should be the way that I'm acting. It's tough. It's a challenge, but it's possible. And surrounding yourself with the right people, coaching is a huge piece. And if the listeners out there wanted to get in touch with you, they can actually reach you at practicebalance.com, practicebalance.com. I'll put that in the description as well too. The book is out there. Instagram is there. There's just so much, and so much of it starts with a conversation to look outside. There's something called Jahara's window. I mentioned it a little bit. I don't know a bunch about it. Have you ever heard of Jahara's window?
No.
Jahara's window is very interesting, and it's just the way that we discover things. There are things about us that others know that we don't know. Like if I'm talking to you and my face makes this face, it's telling you something that I don't even know that it's telling you, right? I feel it, but I don't know that I'm telling you. So that may be one of these quadrants. And the other thing in the quadrant would be something that I know and you know. Like now, my name is Brett. We both know this, but there are certain things that we can learn about ourselves through this perspective. And that self-realization piece is huge. Sometimes it takes somebody else to let us know, hey, Brett, that face that you're making, it scares me. Don't do that, right? And I wouldn't know that unless I'm talking into a mirror or I'm talking with somebody who has that perspective, the ability to pick up, the ability to connect. And if the listeners want to connect with you, they can reach out to you and do this. So you've got the book, you've got the website, Instagram. You talk about coaching. Is that something that you're doing, you're offering now?
Yes. So I currently do one-on-one coaching for professionals. And you can inquire and do a free coaching consult with me on the phone through the website, or you can send me a DM on Instagram as well. And I am hoping at the end of this year, 2024, early 2025, that I will be offering a self-guided confidence course, which is all about confidence, something that almost everyone who inquires and who comes to me for coaching needs and is wanting, as I mentioned. So that is upcoming. And the book is available on Amazon, and there's a link to it through my website. Basically, you can do everything through the website right now.
I love it. I love it. And I'm attached to everything you're saying. I'm excited to read the book, Lean Out. And the last little note, that moment of quiet that we create, that this time when we allow ourselves to stop and shut off the world, is such a beautiful place to be. And if you can schedule that so it's consistent and just kind of, I heard somebody say embrace the suck the other day. And I think these are those moments where we try to create these habits or these moments that make us uncomfortable or get us out of the norm. Just embrace that piece, because once you set into it and you're able to do your best to shut the world off, there's so much magic that happens in those times. And for me, personally, I love the sauna. I don't know why. If I can get 15 minutes in the sauna where I'm shut down, I even binaural beats. I don't know if you've heard of those. I love binaural beats, and it allows me to help shut everything down. I just allow my brain to do what it does. And sometimes it's just be quiet. Just be quiet. Let it go. Sometimes it's my brain will start thinking of opportunities, and it just brings down all the walls. But ultimately, for me, prayer and meditation in those moments almost get to the point of maybe that is the manifestation, and I don't even practice it. So slowing down is a beautiful place to be, and being grateful for just where we're at. I am so grateful that I've had the opportunity to speak with you today, Dawn. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Brett. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Hey, was it the best one you've ever been on?
I don't know, maybe.
Oh, all right. Well, I'll play that. I'll edit it out. I'll edit it out, and now we can do AI voice, and it's going to be like, yes, Brett, you're the best. No, I'm just joking.
Oh, you're still recording?
Yes. Yeah. We're still on. We're still live.
Oh, okay. In that case, yes, it absolutely
See
was.
there. See, it's beautiful. Everything's great. No, thank you so much. Sincerely. Thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure. And so many times I have these conversations, it's like when you hear these things come back and other people learning from them and sharing them, it helps set those anchors in on the things that my values and what I believe, and the things that I know that I need to work on, because not only for my own happiness, but the happiness for my family and those I get to share that happiness with. So thank you for allowing me to share some of my happiness with you. And for the listeners out there, the smile on my face, hopefully you can hear that through my voice. Thank you for your time today. And as always, thank you for your attention. Today, I would ask that you put some attention on your own happiness and your own self-realization to understand where you're at, what makes you happy, what triggers do you have, and ultimately allow those values that you should be focusing on be the guideposts for your life, that, as Dawn says. So until next time, this is Real Estate Mogul MD.